That beautiful golden brown bread all the way around. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making sandwich bread. As always, this bread contains no gluten and no dairy products, but today we're also leaving out the yeast. Let's get started. Hello. Okay, to get started today, we're going to preheat our oven. I'm starting that over. To get started, we're going to preheat our oven to 375 degrees. I've also prepared my bread pan here. I've used a little cooking spray and parchment paper. We know I love my parchment paper. The purpose of the parchment paper here is to help me get the bread out of the pan and so that I don't have to scrub it. So if you don't have parchment paper, no problem. Spray with cooking spray or use shortening butter to grease the pan, and that's all ready to go. In my mixer, I'm starting with 2 egg whites. Now, when you're thinking substitutions, we need to think about the purpose of the ingredient in our product in order to know what would make a good substitution. For this recipe, I'm using 4 egg whites in 2 different ways. In this recipe, egg whites are providing both the stability for the bread and the structure, as well as the air in our texture. So I'm starting with 2 egg whites that I'm going to beat to a soft peak, so not all the way to meringue, but that it stands up. So we'll look at what that looks like. Okay, so I'm about halfway to the consistency I want with my eggs. I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. The cream of tartar helps stabilize the egg white and keep it fluffy for adding to my bread in a minute. And then I'm just gonna keep beating it till I get a little firmer egg white. You're gonna get in close there. So you can see the beater is now leaving streaks. You can see that difference in the texture in the egg white. That's the look we're looking for. So they're soft peaks, not quite firm. And when I turn this off, we're gonna be able to, the egg whites will stand up. So as I pull this out of here, oops, first I have to unlock it. The egg whites stand up on their own. So they're still soft, and not, hard, but it does have texture on its own. So I'm gonna go ahead and move that into a smaller bowl. Let's get that out of the way. And then into the same mixing bowl, because why do extra dishes? I'm going to add my dry ingredients. It's okay if there's some egg white left behind because it's all going to the same place anyway. They're pretty. To my mixing bowl, I'm going to add 3 cups of my flour blend. And then I need 1.5 teaspoons of xanthan gum. Remember, the xanthan is what holds the grains together since we don't have any gluten in there to do that. 1.5 teaspoons. Didn't get quite dry in the dishwasher. To dry it a little bit. Along with that, you could add about 1 teaspoon of salt. We try to do low sodium at our house, so I'm leaving out the salt today. Next, I need some egg white protein powder. So this is just egg white protein. Like I said, there's a lot of egg in this. This egg white protein is what is giving the structure to our bread. The egg whites that we whipped would be more for the texture. I'm doing 1/4 of a cup. And then baking powder. Baking powder is what is replacing my yeast for the rise in this bread. We need 4 teaspoons of that. And that was my adjustable measuring spoon. I went to 2 teaspoons and did that twice, so 4 teaspoons of baking powder. And then I'm just going to mix my dry ingredients together a bit here. All right, now for my wet ingredients. I have 1.5 cups of non-dairy milk. I'm using Oatly oat milk today. So 1.5 cups of whatever kind of non-dairy milk you use. To that, I'm adding 2 more egg whites. No need for a fancy egg separator, just very carefully back and forth on the shell. Takes care of it.
What do you do with all the yolks later?
Make custard.
Is this an excuse to make dessert?
Uh-huh. No, it's so we have sandwiches while we're working.
And then custard.
And then custard for late night dessert. Okay, so we've got milk, egg whites, and then we're going to add some melted butter. Still in the microwave. 6 teaspoons of melted butter. I'm using the Voix Life unsalted butter here. Is it necessary to mix all of these things together? No, they could go right into your dry ingredients fine. I just happen to like to put them all together. And then I'm going to use some white balsamic vinegar. Apple cider vinegar works great too. I prefer the flavor of the white balsamic. It has a little less that tart acidity to it. The purpose of the vinegar is to activate the baking powder. So you need the acid to activate the baking powder. And we are going to use 2 teaspoons of white balsamic vinegar. And then my last thing is some honey, and I need 2 tablespoons of honey. If I would have thought about it, I would have dipped my measuring spoon in the butter before I poured it into my milk, and that way my honey would have come out of the spoon easier, but oh well. The purpose of the honey is sweetness. So you could substitute something else that would add the sweetness for the flavor of the bread, or not if you preferred not to have any sugar content at all. Okay, I'm pouring all of that in.
Could you use artificial sweetener?
It would depend on the kind of artificial sweetener. Some of them don't bake well.
Stevia baking?
Yeah, stevia baking would probably work great. But some of them just are not meant for baking because they just can't handle the temperature, the heat. Okay, mix that all up. And then once it's mixed and you don't see any more streaks of the dry baking products of flour and things, I'm gonna turn off the mixer here, and I'm gonna unlock it. I'm going to add about half of my egg white, and then mix it again just until there's no white streaks in the bowl. So we don't want to overmix now because then the fluff in the egg whites would disappear. We just want to mix it in, and then we're going to add the rest of them by hand. Okay, so I don't see any more streaks of white. We're going to add the rest of these egg whites by hand to continue to keep that air in there for our bread. All right, I'm just going to move this over here out of the way. And then the rest of my egg whites are going in. It does get lighter as you mix it in. It feels like it's getting lighter.
Poofy happens before you bake more than while it's baking with yeast.
So yes, some. So in a yeast bread, you let it rise. So the yeast does its job and fills the bread with air as it's rising. You let it set and it rises. Because there's no yeast in this, we don't need to let it rise. The egg white adds some of that, and then as it bakes, the temperature in the oven activates the baking powder, which will then cause more rise.
This is way faster than making yeast bread.
Oh, absolutely. Yeast bread takes, hours because you have to make it, let it rise, roll it out, let it rise. Yeah. Okay. In my prepared pan, I'm just going to pour in and then smooth it all out in there.
If you did this right, how much more will it expand?
It'll rise pretty good.
Double its size?
Yeah, we're about an inch below the top of the pan, and it'll probably a good inch above. All right, all nice and smooth out in there. Beautiful. Ready for the oven. Again, we are at 375, and I'm going to bake this for about 50 minutes to an hour, kind of watching to see how it gets all golden brown and done in the middle. There we go. See you in about 50 minutes. We're about halfway through baking, and it's starting to smell so good that Harris wants a bite, that I couldn't resist taking a peek. I don't normally recommend opening the oven during baking bread because it will change the temperature of the oven, but you have to see this.
Whoa.
It's already starting to rise and turn golden brown around the top. It's gonna be good sandwiches. My timer just went off for 50 minutes and I'm ready to check my bread. Look at how golden brown that is. Beautiful. And it feels firm. Sounds a bit hollow when I tap it. Looks good to me. Best thing about the parchment paper, comes out perfect. That beautiful golden brown bread all the way around. I'm just gonna cut the ends off of this. That'll let the steam out so that it doesn't get gooey and mushy in the middle. It lets the steam cool all the way. You can already see the texture in there. There's air bubbles. That's from our egg white. Nice and light and airy. Beautiful. I'm gonna let this cool for just a few minutes, and then I'm gonna make a sandwich and have some lunch. As usual, I was a little impatient and didn't wait for my bread to cool, but I'm ready for my sandwich. Yep. No gluten, no whey, no yeast. Yum. Oh, don't forget to subscribe so I can keep making yummy bread for you. Goodbye.